Look, I feel like Kobe, 24, you know I had to ice my wrist. I've been ballin' since a young, you know I had to stack my chips. Bending corners, 12 personas, know we had to take them risks. You want a spot, then take a shot, don't give a fuck about no miss. We in the field, but I'm in the end zone, no I can't lie. Good as a friend, but she and her friends go look at the score. I'm sorry, little brother, you know you can't.
What is up, YouTube? Welcome back. We are now under 5 weeks out. Slight variations to the plan. We'll go through those today. Basically, we've had to push back starting the season full week. So we are under 5 weeks out now. You'll be following us around for our first push day of the week. So Monday, usually we do filming on a Tuesday. So we've got a bit of a different session. There's some shoulder pressing, some chest pressing, cable flyers, lateral raises, some bicep work, some posing. So we'll take you through that. Got a bunch of questions to get through, updates on the season, updates on the prep, how things are going, how work's going. Some interesting updates about uni, which is always amusing. But yeah, we're gonna get cracked into this. It's nice and early at 6 a.m. Starting to feel tired at the front and the back end of prep now. We'll answer all those questions and get updates happening as we get across the session, but let's do it.
What's changed from the last session we did?
Ooh, what's changed from the last session? That was a month ago. Oh man, everything. Not in bad ways. Training variations, a few different exercise selections have been rotated out or modified. Chris has pulled some of the intensifiers down. Macros have come right down now, so we're on 200 carbs a day on my low days, and we're on 280 carbs on high days. So by the last video, we were about 260 low days and about 320 on the high days. So substantial reductions. Mostly just keep the pressure on now while we're kind of ahead, to really just try and make sure we land as best we can. We're not digging up until the show. If we need to, we need to. If not, it's not the end of the world. But yeah, realistically, that's the main things. Steps have gone up by like 1,000 steps a day, which is not an issue. Cardio's an extra 5 minutes a day, 4 times a week. Again, not an issue. So yeah, they're the main changes really. Probably the biggest drops to macros, some slight increases to output, but besides that, everything else is relatively the same.
What about recovery and energy?
Energy's taking a dip, getting a lot more afternoon naps in where possible, depending on the workload. Trying to get a lot of front load work done so I'm not as work focused in the afternoons. Just trying to find the right time to shut down and turn off. Sleep is actually improving between naps and actually getting to bed. You know, it's like 8.5, 9 hours of sleep across the day now, which for me, I usually operate inside like 7.5. So the extras is definitely needed, but also adding up. Because right now, like the main focus of the energy that we have is the essentials for work, study, and uni. Anything more than that right now is pretty much just like draining the tank. So social events, or no, there's pretty much no more like social events, socializing, going out, doing things, just kind of like bumming around the house and being a hermit.
How much does someone's lifestyle affect the way you set them up for prep?
How much does someone's lifestyle affect the way I set them up for prep? It'll affect whether I set them up for prep at all or not. If someone's lifestyle already isn't aligned with competing, there'll be a big conversation about how we delay the time frame to get started so they can get their life in line with competing. A lot of people mistakenly and stupidly think they can go from nothing to everything and there won't be any implications. The stupid part is everything has a cost and a trade-off, and whether it's in the short term and the long term, if you're rapidly trying to modify everything to get on stage, the compensation on the back end will be drastic. If you aren't setting yourself up first at the front end, you'll pay for it at the back end. If you take the time to invest in the front end, you'll be better off on the back end. So lifestyle variables for me are a huge factor as to whether or not someone gets on stage or whether they even start prep. It's too important in the overall equation to the result that you want to not have it dialed in first. So for me, it's everything, as opposed to like, I'm just gonna start a prep with no history of doing anything around it. Two, three, four, five. The change with Chris too at this point with training is with how fatigued I'm getting. We're mostly going into sessions to try and match weights, maybe take an extra rep, just to make sure that we're preserving tissue, but not kind of like putting ourselves into a recovery hole. Right now, it's a weird state where some sessions I feel amazing and I can take an extra 10 kilo jump. And there's some sessions where like the extra rep feels like it's gonna bury me in the ground. So trying to be conscious of where fatigue and energy is. He doesn't want me pushing heavy progressions at 4 weeks out. So some movements like this, it's kind of like a match the rep or ab one. Other movements kind of like don't go crazy and trying to be controlled about it.
So what's this? Is this another working set? Heavier or lighter?
I'll go lighter on the next set for a back off set.
Yeah.
Yeah, bad. Depending on what we define as bad prep or rush prepping, but if it's because you're out of shape and you're out of condition and you're not going to make it in time, generally it's a timeline management issue. So you weren't ready ahead of time, you weren't in condition to get started, you had too much to pull off in a short window of time, you didn't have the experience, skills or tools necessary to be able to handle the quick prep. All those things generally lead to spiral behaviors, collapses in willpower, in environmental control, overconsumptions, binging compensations. Yeah, if you're underprepared and you're rushing towards the back end, generally you thought you could do more in a shorter period of time than you could, and that will come back to bite you in the ass.
What you were saying about your sets and that fatigue, sometimes it can be great, sometimes it's... Are you still taking the same like pre-workout as you were taking, say, 2-3 months ago?
Yeah. So the way I kind of work with Chris, which I like, is something that I've done with some of my guys, is just introduce like a caffeine cap. It's like a stimulant limit.
Yeah.
So at the moment, it's like just basically keep it under 400 milligrams a day. So what I'll do is still do like half scoop pre-workout, creatine, glutamine, N-acetylcysteine in a different drink, but a couple other things like citrulline, stuff like that to help with the pump. But I'll basically take a half stimulant pre-workout and then take a full scoop of like pump formula, combine those with a little bit of extra salt. And so that way like total stimulant is still staying roughly the same.
Yeah.
Just so I'm not getting too dependent, disrupting sleep. At this point, like as weight's coming down, we try to look at milligrams per kilogram, right? So as weight's coming down, my actual dose is technically kind of going higher per kilogram because I'm getting lighter. Yeah. So you want to try and keep it around 400 milligrams as the cap. For me now, as I'm getting lighter and more sensitive and body fat's coming off, there's going to be more of a response to the same dose, realistically. So we're trying to keep it under control and not go crazy with it, because as you start to dip, it becomes a lot easier to add that extra scoop or take the extra energy can or have the extra coffee. So we're trying to keep that under wraps. Shit. What's that?
I'm using that.
Doing a 1 rep max.
Fuck off.
Hey?
I said fuck off. It's a 3 rep max, all right?
shit. Woo.
What's a question you always ask a client before prep?
Does your significant other know and align with what you're about to do? Is your workplace in a position where you can handle 6 months of this? Do you have any non-negotiable obligations to your social calendar that you will try to adhere to or include in the next 6 month window? Main reasons for all those is the significant other in the household is going to play a major role in whether your prep is successful or not. You absolutely do not want to lose your job to win a plastic trophy that you're probably not going to win statistically in your first season. And social relationships that will pressure you to come out, to drink, to party, all become energy drainers that you have to constantly reject, say no to, push back on, and enforce boundaries with. If you don't have those fixed non-negotiable dates locked in before prep starts, you become reactive to saying yes in prep, and that is the worst way to go about it. So ensuring we have something in the calendar so we know what is needed to attend and what is optional, and then it becomes very clear which things we remove and don't worry about. So those 3 things alone, around anything else, supplementation protocols, nutrition history, things like that, but chances are to get into a prep, we've already got that covered. But those things specifically, especially a first timer, non-negotiable to ask every time.
What is something people think coaching is, but it actually isn't?
It's not babysitting. So at a certain point, when you hire a coach, you have to be willing to do the thing that is required to get the result. Hiring the coach does not guarantee the result or the outcome you're trying to achieve. Too many people think by hiring a coach, I'm paying money every week, that something should just magically happen. We can't do the work for you. We are not the driver. The best case scenario is that we are a very well-educated GPS. You have to do the driving, the steering, the directing. We just tell you the best way to get there, try to shorten the distance. So a lot of people will think they'll hire a coach and, oh, I'm getting coached, I'm paying for a coach. I speak to them every week. But if every week you are still overeating food, not sleeping properly, not filling in check-ins, not doing the training, not hitting your step targets, then that isn't coaching. You're just paying for someone to tell you to do a better job. It's babysitting, and that's the worst way to go about coaching, and usually how I will actually let you go as a client. Ah, shit.
What separates a real coach from someone who just hands out plans?
One of the biggest differences is caring once they've left your site. So if you're a face-to-face PT, if you see them in person, if you do like a phone call check-in with a client once a week, once a month, something like that, coaching goes so much further than just a prescribed program and meal plan. So We're trying to understand lifestyle variables, emotional variables, social relationships, work commitments, time frames, schedules, family dynamics. There are so many variables that go into the interplay of coaching when you're actually trying to guide someone across life into the development of the physique or result they're trying to achieve. You can't just care when you see them and then move on to the next person. So empathy to a degree and accountability beyond when you see them face to face are some of the biggest variables that shift and shape coaching. If you don't have the desire to do those things, you're probably not a coach. That's okay. But coaching requires you to care beyond when you see them, because there are too many variables that impact how we get a result across time that you can't just leave it to when I saw you last, or here's your 12-week program, see you later. Oh shit.
What's the difference between a coach and a trainer?
I think kind of like we touched before, a trainer might have 50, 60, 100 sessions a week. A trainer might write a program or a meal plan. A trainer might speak to you when they see you next for a gym session. It might be a little bit of gossip, banter back and forward. Yeah, they're teaching you how to lift, how to move through the program. Coaching is a lot more communication, it's a lot more accountability, it's a lot more systemization, it's a lot more education, mentoring, it's a lot more life structure, and a lot more responsibility. It's not to say that trainers don't have roles and responsibility with someone, but I can't do 100, 200 clients a week in the same way a trainer can do 100, 200 sessions in a week. The time required to handle clients the way that we do, I physically could not handle that many clients and ethically say that I hold the same standard. So there's a lot of, I think where a lot of it crosses over and people kind of get it, you know, they use trainer and coach synonymously these days. There's a stark difference in the responsibilities, I think, when you are a coach versus when you're a trainer on the gym floor. Too tired for your shit, so it probably looks like you're tough. Alright. Something that is annoying the hell out of me. In the age of the science-based lifter with no history of coaching, no clients on the gym floor, and no actual communicative skills working with individuals face-to-face, people are way too confident now on social media to tell you exactly how something should be done from someone who hasn't done the thing. We're getting people so caught up in the 3-second attention-seeking clickbait that we don't actually understand context and conceptualization in the application of a knowledge piece, of a research topic, or a principle that needs to be applied. The debates around volume versus intensity, when that isn't the entire equation anyway. There is volume, there is intensity, there is frequency. But then around that, we get this idea of like, well, this person forgot to mention frequency, so it doesn't count. But then they fail to recognize where recoverability sits inside it. Rather than being a 3-legged stool, it is a 4-legged chair. The point is, we're getting kids with no history of knowledge or application, reading all of the abstracts in the articles, trying to tell everyone how the world should work and how things should be done, trying to overemphasize and clickbait because their favorite research Instagrammer has said this is the variable because everyone wants to talk about this one thing is the reason why hypertrophy isn't working for you, and then fail to understand that all those principles fit inside an equation that leads to the outcome of the program that you write. If you can't do that and you can't understand those contexts, you want a coach, you're just reiterating clickbait and catchphrases and keywords. And it's the most frustrating thing right now, because the second a research piece changes, or the second that a researcher or an Instagram account changes their opinion, not based on evidence, just on the next clickbait topic or trend, then all of the industry changes with it. And it's the most frustrating thing because it isn't how it works. To give a real-time example of where this fits in, volume and intensity are not separate things that you have to argue which one matters more. What you need to understand is the individual you're working with. If intensity is low in a client and they haven't quite learned how to train hard, generally you can compensate by increasing total volume. At a certain point though, if volume goes too high and recoverability becomes impacted, you have to understand how to pull that down. If volume is too high, chances are that intensity won't match with the client. You can't train 50 sets in a week to absolute failure. If the client knows how to train hard, you won't need as much volume. However, at some point, in order to achieve progressive overload and increase the specificity of volume, we will probably drive that number up on the area we're trying to train. That will then come into how we hit frequency, which is how many days a week are we training that muscle group. 2 times is better than 1, sometimes 3 times works out better than 2. Then we have to equate and understand how much of that impacts and implicates the ability to recover over a week. That is how you map out and consider programming, not intensity matters more than everything, frequency matters more than everything. If that is how you think, you are not critically thinking and actually coaching. Ugh. 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 Oh shit.
When you're writing someone's program, what's the first thing you look at?
First thing to look at, what they're trying to achieve, because you reverse engineer from that and deconstruct it. Then we'll look at what their current skill is, what their current training proficiency level is, what movements they know, what they enjoy, what they can do. Then we need to break down how many days a week they can train, how much time per session they can fit in, and then we start looking at what needs to be included per session in order to achieve the stimulus we're trying to get to maximize the time that we have to get the most out of each workout. So I use a very deductive top-down reasoning sort of approach to programming, trying to base it out in, say, a 12-month window, and then looking at how that fits across a plan or a lifestyle or a life cycle for a client, what we're trying to achieve. So it's very much what is the objective overall outcome and how do we reverse engineer for that based on the phase that we're in and what we're trying to achieve out of the program.
And how often should people change their training program?
Most people, very, very rarely, unless they've absolutely run the program into the ground and got every inch, every drop of juice out of the fruit. So I've run training blocks that are 26, 28 weeks. So that's going over half a year before I've had changes. And changes don't even mean you have to change the entire program itself. It could be redistribution of volume. It could be an exercise rotation. It could be a change to set to reps. It doesn't have to be all of a sudden we're going to like 4 upper days, 1 leg day when we've been doing 2 leg days and 3 upper days. It just might be how we modify inside the program to keep new stimulus coming. So maybe we go from an incline dumbbell bench press to an incline Smith machine press for more external stability. Little changes like that are enough to continue driving progression where you don't have to rewrite the whole thing. Novelty needs to be considered, but a lot of people need to let go of shiny object syndrome and stop seeking the next dopamine excitement and realize that they've got a lot more out of the exercises and the layout that they have if they push it to the max intensity.
Do you think people change their exercises too often?
I think the average person doesn't even really have a program. So one of the biggest mistakes people make is coming into the gym without a plan, just kind of winging it based on like what day they feel like training. I heard literally kids here about a month ago walking out of the gym, walking out of the bathroom, and he said, my split is the whatever's not sore program. And so we're coming in here spending 2-3 hours like, I don't know about most people, but generally if I invest this much time in training, especially as a young guy, yes, go in and train hard, but kind of have an idea of what you're trying to achieve out of the workout, what you're trying to do. And that generally comes from the guidance of a program to structure your effort. Like if you were to be trialing out for a sport, if you were trying to study and you said, I spend 2 hours in the books every night, but you're reading the same page over and over again because you haven't progressed to the next page, you haven't turned the page over, at a certain point you're gonna get agitated and pissed off that nothing's happening. You're not learning anything new. You're spending 2 hours in the books, but you're not actually gaining anything. In the same way with training, you can come in here and say you're working out for 2 hours or 3 hours, probably gas bag and using your thumbs, but if you're not actually progressing your training, tracking your data, understanding what movements need to be improved, then you're not really training and progressing anything, you're just kind of spending time. And to me, I'm too busy to spend time. I would like to know that there's return on the investment of my time and the effort I'm putting in. So not only are you not changing exercises, not only are you changing exercises too quickly, you're probably changing exercise too quickly because you don't even have a program to follow. Oh, belly.
Oh, big buoy.
Big belly.
Oh, damn. What's the biggest misconception people have about what happens after a show? They can eat what they want straight away.
They can eat what they want, drink what they want, do what they want, nothing will matter. How you reverse out of a show is drastically going to impact your psyche, your emotional stability, your body composition, your metabolic health, insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity, body fat acquisition, the amount of things that become impacted by how rapidly you gain weight post-show. Now, there is a healthy range for that to happen and a healthy duration, but going from eating whole food, single ingredient product, mostly lean meats, vegetables, starch, carbohydrates, to suddenly adding in all the donuts and cakes and biscuits and the creams and the spreads, the oils and fats you haven't had, is the greatest way to lead to GI issues. It's the greatest way to lead to things like diarrhea. It's the greatest way to lead to massive inputs of fat acquisition. Yes, there is the argument that a single day of bad food, high calories, will not lead to a large acquisition of fat mass. But if you don't keep it in check across the week and have plans and strategies to reverse out of it, then you will rapidly gain back the fat you just spent time losing. So the amount of people that I've seen compensate and gain back their pre-prep starting weight and have changed none of the behaviors. If you're using prep to establish systems, behaviors, routines, and structure, you need to lock those in so that when prep starts, you maintain that system. Prep is very productive and very efficient at making you consistent. It's up to you then to decide how you keep that after the show. And a lot of people kind of throw the baby out the bathwater and just go, well, you know, it's show day +1 now, I'm done, I'm good to go, I can eat whatever I want. That isn't how living this lifestyle and being a bodybuilder works. Have some food, enjoy yourself, but it is not a free-for-all once the show's over. Arguably, the post-show phase is more structured, is more volatile, requires more adherence than during the prep if you want to be healthy after the fact. Now, if you just want to be someone who blows up, eats shit, gains back a bunch of weight, then blames bodybuilding for your eating disorder problems, that's a different story, and I'll tell you to go F off, because it's not actually bodybuilding's fault, it's yours for not having the plans and structure.
So on that topic we were just on,
Yep.
how do you balance a social life and recovery after a show?
So one of the things I encourage people to do is, after the show, don't react impulsively. Plan with friends what you want to include, right? So if you have family that want to go to, like you usually do breakfast, you can go to breakfast, right? You don't have to eat 1,000,000 pancakes with ice cream and chocolate and Nutella and, you know, 1,000-calorie milkshake every single morning. You can go get what you call a scratch kitchen breakfast. Most cafes have that available. So you say, hey, with this group or with this family, I'm gonna go get a coffee, we're gonna go to breakfast. You can still get sourdough and eggs on toast. You can get chicken, you can get shredded, you know, vegetables on the side. Pick a group where like maybe they want to go to dinner. So you might get something like Italian or you might get pizza, but choose share options. The social reconnection that you need from being isolated in prep doesn't mean you have to have an absurd amount of calories. You are well within your right to say, I'm gonna have a share platter, or I'm gonna share plates. If they're mostly concerned about the social connection, then having shared options is not the end of the world. If they're forcing you to eat a whole pizza because they want to have a whole pizza, that's a them thing, not a you thing. I would be challenging how much they actually care as friends, because it doesn't sound like they want to catch up because they want the relationship. They just want to eat shit food. What do you actually want out of the reverse phase of prep? To be healthy and continue the lifestyle, or go back to eating shit? That's pretty much how it works for me. You're a grown adult, make decisions that align with what you want to achieve and reconnect with people.
Looking back, what did you get wrong about prep in the early days of your career?
What did I get wrong in the early days? Now this could be a me getting it wrong thing, or it could be a multitude of variables, but probably not giving myself a sufficient timeline to get to the stage properly. I've learned a lot from my own coaching, from my own coaching experiences, and like my preps and stuff as well. So again, it goes back to where anecdote does become evidence when you use it properly and you break it down. But for me, I think the biggest thing was being in better positions to start. Now, some of that is from my own choosing, where I simply said, I'm going to start this and I'm going to finish it. And the best I can produce that is what's on me to produce. In hindsight, looking at, for example, how we started Josh, we now have so much time up our sleeve to modify, manipulate, and change things up based on his work schedule, his life, because he's so far ahead in the condition that we need to be in. So there's a lot to be said for, understanding timelines better, preparing and pre-planning things a little bit more effectively, and then looking at how I can implement that for clients. So that's probably one of the biggest things that, looking back, I would do differently, slightly. But at the same time, every result and experience that I have in my background has led me to know what I know now. It gives me the empathy and understanding as a coach that I have, the knowledge and skill that I have, and also the drive and discipline that I have. So at the end of the day, you can only play the hands that you're dealt, and you can only play the current innings. That's what we got.
What was the hardest prep that you've ever done?
I don't think I've done an easy prep. Last prep we ran 50 grams of carbs at the front end to try and get ahead, and I ended up running that for, I think it was like 8 to 10 weeks with incremental refeeds. That was rough. My first prep I got down to 1200 calories for 6 weeks, especially as the first time, and that was rough. The prep in 2022, I ran 50 grams of carbs, 220 protein for, I think, 2 weeks to try and dig out a bit more for nationals. So the great thing about the background that I have is that any difficulty that a client thinks they're going to have with a prep, I've probably done it, and I can tell them it's possible because I've been in it and done it properly. So it kind of gives me a degree of perspective and understanding that if I'm asking to do something hard, it's because it's the only option that we have. Once you go through something like that as a coach, it gives you a different perspective as to understanding like what you're actually asking someone to do. So yeah, as much as I like to reflect on things, I've never really had an easy prep. This is the best prep I've ever had, without question. To be this far out in this condition on 200 grams of carbs is fantastic. But with that, allows me to have a good hindsight and perspective for my own clients and how I coach.
What advice would you give to your younger self starting a prep?
Don't wish it away. Although it's hard and it sucks, the first prep I did, it got to a point where I was thinking, I can't wait for this to end, or I can't wait for my carb load or to get food in or like show day. And so you're kind of wishing away, 6, 7, 8, 10, however long weeks of your life. And when you look at it on a board of meditation and you look at the fact that you might only have, 50 times 80, you work out, you don't really have that many weeks in life. And then you reduce that down to how many weeks you're actually physically capable and able as an independent adult. And you realize that for something that's as awesome as what it is and the experience that you gain from it, wishing away 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 4 weeks, because it's difficult, misses out on the lessons and the experiences that comp actually has to teach and prep has to offer. Those are the weeks where you need to embrace the most and lean in and find ways to get through it, because that's the lessons you extrapolate and take the rest of your life. So the first thing would be basically don't wish it away. Fuck. Woo. It's hard because like my sup load and food is high enough where I feel good when I'm training to a degree, but it's after training where I bottom out, like where I tank, and then realize that I probably shouldn't push that hard. Like it puts you in a kind of a hole for the day.
Yeah.
Like last Wednesday, I maxed the rep count for the weight I was on pendulum squats. So I went up 5 kilos from 75 to 80 and still got 7 reps out of the 6 to 10 I'm supposed to get. That effort, the feet that I was dragging for the rest of the session, like the rest of the day on Wednesday, our steps were literally just like me doing this down the hill and trudging along to get our steps up to go get a coffee. But like in the session, I'm like, fuck yeah, I've got this, it feels great. And you're like, whew. Oh yeah, so we haven't really touched on it. So by the time this comes out, I've already shared on my stories. It won't be a big deal by the time this comes out. But the IFBB have had to reschedule, cancel the date and the location they had in Adelaide for our first show. So we lined up for the 11th to be my first show. We're going to fly to Adelaide, do the South Australia titles. Mostly because I wanted to try a regional show that I hadn't done before. I've only ever done Brisbane and Melbourne. So I wanted to try some different experiences, go to different places and use bodybuilding to travel. Unfortunately, they've, for whatever reason, had to cancel the Adelaide show on the 11th and move it to the 25th, I believe. Now, I've already booked flights, accommodation, TANs, Rego, everything's already booked in. So I'm going to try and reallocate my Rego now to the Queensland show the following week. Chris doesn't want 3 back-to-back peak weeks, because what will essentially happen is we'll have to fly to Adelaide and back, and then inside that same week, then have flights to Melbourne. So between workload, getting client work done, peak week, and the usual uni stuff, we're going to cram that into like 4 days before travel again to then fly down to Melbourne and get squared away. So it's a lot of variable change in a peak week and a physique, I guess, peak look and optimization that Chris isn't happy with. So we're going to be taking Adelaide out of the season, potentially leave a runway in the back end to do NABA in Sydney, which is 4 weeks later. It'll all depend on, as we get closer to it, how I'm feeling and what's happening. You can't really predict how it's going to feel because it falls literally a week before I have exam block. We fly to America 3 weeks later. We've obviously got Josh on stage as well and the rest of our clients plus uni. So there's a lot in that 4 week window that's going to determine whether or not, it's a feasible approach. The flip side is like, do we get through the season, look at how I pulled up, get feedback, and if it's not warranted to keep pushing, we just get straight back to being healthy and get growth happening again. So a little bit of a change and a hiccup to the season than what I had planned. I really want to get more shows under my belt, but at the same time, is what it is. We only play the cards that are dealt. And if that means we just come in even better for Queensland and get my best shot to win that, then that's what we do. Ah, shit. Ugh.
What's a message to someone watching this who wants to compete one day? What's one thing they should understand first?
Ensure that you've developed and built an identity of someone who completes what they start and is compatible with the life that is required to get on stage. Do not look at competing as a way to save your life. Become someone who is capable of competing on the drop of a hat. They are very, very different things. One person is trying to make physique prep forced to fit their life. One person builds their life and it makes it very easy to fit in competing. Identity and identity creation is very important when it comes to getting on stage and handle it properly. A lot of people claim to be someone or claim to be a bodybuilder, they claim to be this, that, and the other, and the second a bit of pressure hits, the second a bit of stress hits, their entire system collapses and they just cave. So before you go trying to add all the pressure and demands and the exhaustion and fatigue, become someone who's capable of doing those things first, which means live this way for a long time. It almost becomes a conflict to your character to not do the things required. At that point, you know you're ready to compete. So if it hurts you to miss training, if it hurts you to not hit a step target, if it hurts you to not get your 7 to 9 hours sleep, if it conflicts with your life to go out and get drunk because your friends are demanding you to come get on it, every other weekend, and it feels like a guilt, not that those things are wrong, but that it's a direct conflict to your character and to your principles, then at a certain point you're starting to know that you're in the right position to think about competing. And then most likely by the time you are that way, you're not going to want to go out and drink, you're not going to want to miss sleeping, you're not going to want to miss your training, you're not going to want to miss your food, and those things become pretty easy to square away. All right, so we're at the point now where we're going to start ramping posing up twice a day, every day. Once obviously in the morning when you kind of, post workout tired, and then another one later in the day after a couple of meals. See how the body's feeling, get some movement around it. Really make sure we come into the show conditioned as possible. Last thing you want to do is present the best look you've ever had and show it off like shit. Again, it's just like the professional standard of the sport. You need to be able to show off the work you've done. I understand people aren't always the biggest fan of posing, it's not why they bodybuild, but at the same time, part of bodybuilding is getting on stage and posing and showing off your physique. So make sure you get it right and do it properly is pretty important. Sort of say I'm perfect at it, but if you're not putting the work to do it, I don't understand why you're bothering. It's like a quarterback that can't throw a spiral. Brooklyn, got any other questions?
No, that's it. You can do your outro there as well. Looks good.
Okay.
No rush whenever you're ready. If there's any more rants you want to go on first?
Oh yeah, there is one actually.
Sweet. Let me hear it.
So, a couple of weekends ago, by the time this comes out, a pro bodybuilder conducted himself in a way that cost sponsorships, invitations, competing. Basically, in one show, ruined his career for the most part. I've got nothing against the guy. I actually like following him. I like following his content and his stuff. His rise last year was very inspiring and motivational. Dude peaked very well for a lot of shows last year. But there is something that I've been harping on about for the better part of near a decade now, which is the psychological stability and emotional stability that you have to carry into a season, into your competitive life, that if you don't bring, you risk far worse outcomes and problems than the possible benefits that come from the season. Going into a show psychologically unstable with all this, that, and the other going on, if you don't have a solid foundation, you can't peak the prep and your shows properly, because your mind and body just aren't going to allow it to happen. The body as a system will break at its weakest link. And if that is mentally, you are going to absolutely shoot yourself in the foot, both on stage and off. It is a reason why I push so many people to understand, regardless of level you're at, drop the ego, drop the arrogance, stop pretending that you're an elite athlete. Most people competing for the first few times are nowhere near that. Invest as much into your psychological health and preparation as you do your physical preparation. There is a reason why we say there is training and nutrition components of coaching and bodybuilding, and there is a psychological component of bodybuilding and coaching. And his outcome from that weekend is directly proportional to the conversation that we've been talking about for a long time, and shows exactly what can come from it if you aren't careful and take it properly. Now, it's not to say that he probably hasn't done work on that. He probably has tried to do work on that. But all it takes is one crack in the system and you can throw it all away. And this can be in the form of, post-comp binge eating disorders that follow up, gastrointestinal issues that follow up, emotional, relational issues that break down, social circles that dissipate. It can be your career getting thrown down the drain. All these things to get on stage that can wait 12 months does not make sense to trade it all off. The trade-offs are not worth the result that you're going to get. If you invest in those things and take the time properly to fix them and prepare them, the result that you will get will be 10 times better. So you have to look at the risk to reward here and understand that rushing to stage is not a good idea, especially if you aren't emotionally and psychologically prepared. And that can be at the most elite level, that can be at the first timer level. No one is above being psychologically and emotionally prepared to get on stage. Because if you aren't, you're going to ruin your life. All right, guys. So that is our upper day for March. By the time this comes out, by the time we shoot our next upper session, we are going to be in April, which puts us two weeks inside of show. So things are getting to the fun end now, getting very excited. The coaching spots are still open. We are still taking on clients. If you are curious what that looks like, if you want to get on stage, if you're preparing for a show next year, now is the time to book that in. We have guys reaching out to us now to book in for 2027, season A, B, and C. So it is going beyond a 6-month window to get on stage. Make sure you take the time to prepare properly. As we've talked about in this episode, book in a consult. It's free to have a chat and figure out exactly how we help you. We have 5 weeks to stage now, so make sure that you like, subscribe, follow, leave comments. We're gonna be ramping up content, day in the lives, behind the scenes. As we get closer to shows, we're gonna be capturing as many days as we can for what's going on. So make sure you're following along for all that. Let us know what you wanna see. Let us know what you're curious on, ask questions, whatever it is. It's all coming out as we get closer and closer to stage. So yeah, we are 5 weeks, inside 5 weeks now, and things are gonna start getting hairy from this point on. So let's do it.
Look, I feel like Kobe 24, you know I had to ice my wrist.